So hello and welcome back to another video. I'm here with Johnny again. This is the second video in our personal empowerment series. The first video was about the relationship between the mind and the body to create an initial awareness. So I hope you've been practicing that. Today we're going to talk about the chakra and the chakra system.
They relate to the body, how they relate to personal empowerment, and what we can do with them and how we can use them to control and empower and fulfill our lives.
Perfect. There will be a third video, which is the overall personal empowerment video, obviously. So do come back for that. If you haven't already, please just subscribe and let's get into the video. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your experience with chakras, how you got into them or how you have utilized them before?
I got into chakras quite near the beginning of my journey. I started off looking into Hindu philosophy, Buddhist philosophy, Chinese philosophy. I was very drawn away from Western tradition and I looked over to our Eastern brothers and sisters and what they'd found out in their explorations of the mind and psychology and what it means to be human. The great thing about the Eastern tradition is that it has been around, recorded for at least 5,000 years, like at least. Some of the oldest records we have of any written language is the old Sanskrit, what we call Vedanta. There are books called the Vedas and there are books called the Upanishads. I was at York Uni, wandering around the library, not doing what I was supposed to be doing, my actual essays, and I came across these books, and once I started reading them, there was something. Sometimes you can't understand what they're trying to tell you, but you can feel that there's more to it than what you can begin to grasp and understand, and that kind of pull from these books, that kind of inner light that came on in me when I was reading these books made me want to know more. Like, I don't quite understand these yet, but I want to get into it. These books were written by people known as rishis or sages. Like, rishi just means master. They had no identity. They didn't record who they were because it wasn't about who they were. The Western world, Christianity, we talk about Jesus, or even in Buddhism you can talk about Buddha, and people can look up to a character, to a person, and want that person to come and help them and live like that person and be like that person. These ancient texts, it wasn't the person who wrote it who cared about what they'd found out. It was the words that they were writing. It wasn't about the person themselves. Anyone can begin to read it and begin to understand, because it's not about a particular tradition, it's about what it means to be human. This has been around for at least 5,000 years, and before that, even in these books, they'll talk about how they learnt this from the ancients. So imagine 5,000 years ago, you're talking about an ancient culture before you. They have an entire cosmology. Before modern day type of science, they were looking at the stars and they were looking at the atoms in the world and they were trying to figure out, how does this all fit together, what does it all mean? At the time I was completely engrossed in physics, connections, how the entire world worked.
Is that what you were studying at uni?
No, I was studying philosophy at the time. Western philosophy was a little bit dry, everything's over explained, I didn't resonate with that. So when I found these books and everything was very simple, still quite difficult to grasp but very simple, it was a breath of fresh air for my tired little heart. So when I'd found that a culture on the other side of the globe for thousands of years had been studying the very same things I was interested in, I was like, I need to know more about this. So that pulled me into deeper studies, and as soon as I read them, I was hooked. It was a very simple, clear system based on how the body works and how it's naturally set out. You can overlay it and translate it onto the physical world for ourselves, because that's where we're focused. That's what we want to improve, and relates back to the natural world as well. So it had this whole holistic view of it. I could learn about myself and the world through learning about chakras. Found resources online, did my own intuitive work, sat with them, tried to work with them, tried to understand them myself. When you learn to meditate, as we were talking about in the last video, you open up your awareness. The exercise of just watching the water. Pick a particular spot and watch it, and watch as your mind unfolds and expands. Once you do that, you have a type of awareness that can then be focused on these parts of the body that Chakra System talks about. Actually has a quite immediate physical effect once you start putting your attention in these places. And that whole area of my life, that whole time in my life, was just this influx of these new ideas and these new ways where spirituality went from being this abstract idea up in space to this grounded, active, action-orientated practice that I could do, in a discipline I could bring to my life. And from there I've been hooked, studying, using it constantly. I've used it to unravel old beliefs in myself. I've used it to heal my emotions. I've used it to heal my mind, to open up to what we call our heart space, which is a place that gives compassion and love to all beings everywhere, in which you find complete and utter peace and contentment. I've used it to ground myself and make myself physical again. I used to love being physical, but over the years I got lost touch with that. And by using chakra work, I've managed to get back into my body and enjoy being physical and exercising again. I don't think there's a single area of my life that the chakras haven't touched. I don't always use it consciously thinking of it as a chakra system. That's one of the beautiful things. You don't have to constantly relate it back to this method that you're using, but it becomes so ingrained in you, or became so ingrained in me. I just naturally use it at any time I'm facing a challenge in my life. It's my first port of call. It's where I go to to overcome and solve the issue.
I'm hoping that people actually watch the first video to start instilling that awareness and start bringing in that focus, so you can make as much use as possible out of this video.
Yes, you can then use that awareness that's been cultivated to direct it towards the chakras. I guess we can get stuck into and start talking about now.
When it comes to the common views about chakras and the chakra system, what are they and how can they sort of relate to others?
I think a lot more people than used to know about the chakra system now. It's resurfaced since maybe the 60s, 70s, like the New Age movement, the hippie movement all came through, and people started really looking towards Eastern philosophies for solutions to like their daily lives and the problems in their daily lives. How can I find more contentment? How can I find more peace? How can I find more joy in just simply living? And the questions that we're asking, the answers weren't really available over here in the West. A lot of people became disillusioned with organised religion. A lot of people still had a faith or a belief in something, but we'd also evolved as a culture to a point where we're sick and tired of people telling us what to do. For some people, the whole idea of going to church and praying and following this strict set of rules, it became another obstacle, another hindrance, something else to fight, where they were trying to follow this inner feeling of there's more to the world, but then they were getting constricted again by the systems they were in. People did turn towards this Eastern tradition, and it has come back, and it's a little bit more popular than it has been for a long time. I was talking to someone the other day, and she thought it had only just happened recently, that the chakra system was recently developed. But as I was saying, it's been around for at least 5,000 years recorded. Before that, God knows how long, 8,000, 10,000 years. So it's not a new thing. That's quite an important fact to understand, that it's based upon constant evidence, and people kept going back to it, and it never fell out of fashion, especially over in India. It was constantly used because it has results, because it works, because you can't deny it once you get into it. So I think for a lot of people, one of the issues might be is we're a very physically based society, a very physically based culture. So the idea of this chakra system is like, well, where is it? What is it? I can't see it. It's not of the physical world or physical reality. But that's what learning about awareness is, because awareness makes you more sensitive to what's already happening within your body. World of higher energies, which the chakras belong to, is constantly present in all of us, but we don't get to feel it because we're not sensitive enough to it. We've not tried to look for it. We've not given ourselves enough time to just stop, unwind, and completely open to those energies. And once we develop awareness, we can begin to feel them as an actual fact. So for me, it's a very simple thing. I don't even have to think about it. I can feel each chakra just as is. I can feel if it's tense and blocked, if it's open and flowing, or if it's in nice harmonic balance. And that's happened because I've cultivated awareness over time and practiced it and become more sensitive to those aspects of ourselves. So for people who are like, I don't believe it, it sounds too unreal, too far-fetched, too outside of the realms of possibility, I can completely understand that, because there was a time in my life when it had no physical, real basis to me. But through the practice of awareness, you become to get in tune with it. Like, in tune is probably quite a good word. You come to resonate and feel it making movements inside of you. So I think people are probably like, they see it, interested, that looks cool, that looks simple, but what do you do with it? I think a lot of people that are into it probably don't quite know what you do with chakras. It sounds like an interesting thing, but they're not quite sure how to apply it to themselves, how to apply it to their lives, what it can actually do. There's some pitfalls with chakras where you start working with them and things don't go quite your way because you don't have the knowledge to understand how they work properly, so then you give up on it and call it a bad job and you move on. Most people either don't know they exist, If they do, they think it's a new thing when it isn't. It's old, tried and tested. And then if you do know what it is and you do believe in it, you're probably not quite sure how to work with it. It sounds like an interesting system of understanding, but where's its practical application in my life? What can I actually do with these things to improve my own sense of self, my own sense of well-being?
When you have this basic awareness that people would have created from the first video, and you realize that it's a quiet, simple system, once we've explained it a bit further, how do you move into kind of a greater sense of understanding?
Understanding how each chakra works. So this is probably a good part where we start talking about them and how they work. The camera can see that.
Yeah.
This is a basic diagram, splits it up into the 7 chakras, and it starts in ascending order, and we start at the bottom of ourselves with what we call the root chakra. Each chakra has a colour to it, a element and a state of matter. 3 basic things. We can go very in depth, but this is just an introductory overview. The first chakra, the root chakra, is governed by the colour red. It's a very earthy chakra. It is the chakra of earth, that is its element. So its colour is red, its element is earth. This means it has to do with physicality. The earth is associated with everything physical, solid and real. It's to do with your own body and how in touch you are with your own body. The body's one and only desire is to keep on living. Like, the body wants nothing else. Everything that comes into being is pulled together out of energy and formed into matter, and all it wants to do is keep on existing in that state. The root chakra is to do with survival and survival drive. Having your basic needs met, food, water, shelter, essentially. Everything to do with the root chakra is to do with feeling safe and secure. It's to do with feeling like you belong to the world, like the world wants you here and you want to be here as well. It is based in the area around the hips and the pelvis. Support, movement, feeling power, like power comes from the hips, comes from here, it all moves up through you, and it gets directed by the hips, gets moved. Why are you looking at me like that, Jamie?
Yes, women, that's what I'm thinking.
What?
Women and their hips.
The basics of the root chakra is how you feel in terms of existing. It's our very basic instincts. We as people have all these things laid on top of us, but when we're breaking it down, this area of our body is to do with feeling like you belong to the world, capable of surviving, happy here, wanted here, feeling connected to the earth and connected to nature. This is a chakra that we can use when we are wanting to feel more security in our lives. It is a chakra you get in touch with when you are wanting to bring a deeper sense of belonging to your life. As a result, it impacts on our financial security and how we relate to money. In modern society, one of the main tools that we use to survive, that chakra is ever out of balance. It can cause a knock-on effect which creates symptoms and expressions in you which make your relationship with money quite poor in some sense, maybe because you don't feel you belong here, or maybe you're too tired of trying to survive here. You kind of get fed up of looking after and managing your money. Overspend to make yourself feel better, not care anymore. I think I've earned some money, I was going to spend it on whatever I want. The root chakra, it's the base chakra. It is the very beginning of what it means to be alive and existing in the first place. Existing. And therefore it's related to the survival drive and surviving whilst you're existing. This is where instinct comes from. Instinct is not a thing which we plan, which we think about, which we get consciously engaged with. The body that has learned to develop over millions of years through every generation of our ancestors that have come before us. The body's one drive to survive has been fine-tuned. As soon as the body senses danger, even before the mind can pick up on it, it'll act. On a dark night, we all get that shiver down your spine like you're being watched, because there's a potential once upon a time, before we had street lights and modern technology, that out there in the forest or wherever you might be living, there is danger around every tree. Instinct that stay on high alert, keep watch because there might be danger around the corner. All those kind of things come from this root chakra, anything to do with existing, survival, our basic primal instincts. Before we even try to bring these qualities about, that what it means to be a human, we are here simply as a body trying to survive, and that's what all the root chakra governs. Chakras can be opened up, they can be blossomed like a flower. This means it's activated, you're very secure in it. So for the root chakra, you'd be very happy with yourself and your life. That doesn't mean that your circumstances have to be perfect. It means you have this very deep sense of, I belong here, I am a part of the earth, I have come from the earth, therefore this is my home, this world is my home. And in that you feel content in everything you do because you don't feel out of place, you feel like you belong here. Chakras can also be closed, and when they do, you'll feel insecure, you'll be worried about where your next meal's coming from, where your next paycheck's coming in, feeling out of place and like you'd rather be somewhere else. We're one of the root sources of our anxieties and our fears. If we're disconnected from the root chakra, we won't feel like we are safe, we won't feel like we're secure. We can talk about how we balance these a little bit towards the end, but those are the main points for the root chakra. Everything to do with existing, everything to do with survival, everything to do with belonging here in this world.